What does it take to create a vibrant, thriving life? First, the sad news is that Thoreau was right. Most people are leading quiet lives of desperation, lacking in meaning, fulfillment, and vitality. But we choose more. We choose to create extraordinary lives. And the Art of Vibrant Living show entertains you with inspiration, empowerment, and education to create your life into a masterpiece. It's time. Let's vibe up. Hey, aloha y'all, Daniel Aaron. I am your host, and indeed it is the Art of Vibrant Living show. I'm excited and delighted. Thank you for being here live or by rebroadcast. We've got a phenomenal show, an amazing guest. I'll tell you about her in a moment. First, my suggestion, invitation, I implore you, do something with this information. Information is cool, and action and transformation even cooler in my estimation as well. If you would like a little support or a lot of support to crank up your life into even more of a masterpiece, I would love to connect with you. Let's have a conversation. You can email me, daniel@danielaaron.com, and we can set up a complimentary conversation. So onward with the show, quite literally. Our guest today, what a phenomenal woman and coach. Dianna Leeder has spent the last 4 decades helping people find and use their voices. She's an award-winning author, trainer of Find Your Voice healers, and an intuitive coach and mentor to those who are done being quiet. Dianna is fulfilling her mission to support the healing of people and the planet through soul connection group programs for women and men. And she believes the use of voice to express our true selves is the answer to an unfulfilled life, and that by learning to manage our relationship with ourselves, we can consciously and intentionally create our own fulfilling, vibrant human experiences. Hallelujah. I am so with that. Awesome. Dianna, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the invitation. And I'm really excited about your term vibe up. That's great. I love it.
Well, okay, then that begs the question for me. How come?
Well, because vibe is all of it, right? I mean, we're talking about people's happiness and their ability to get there and to be in that state of happy, that high vibe state. So it's all about vibration. You know, we call it happy. It's vibration.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm with you, and it's a funny one because wasn't that many years ago that vibe or vibration seemed like kind of an out there concept. And over the last, I don't know, decade or so, something like that, it's become a normal part of the conversation, and everybody understands, scientifically based. It's not woo woo. It's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah. It's energy. Yeah.
Well, and with the work you do, I'm only learning about it now, learning more from you about it now, but vibe and vibration and voice have some things in common. So before we jump into that, though, would you be up for sharing a bit with our audience about how you got to where you are, like what brought you to doing this kind of work in the world?
Absolutely. Thank you for that invite. So when I first got when I just took my first job, I wasn't very old. I would have been maybe 20. And I started working in a women's shelter. And I didn't question why I was there. I just knew I needed to be there. So I spent 10 years there at that women's shelter. And I realized from there and to the next position that I took that, I was always talking about voice. It was always about voice. You know, assaulted women don't have a voice. They're too frightened to use what they have. The next job was community development. So, you know, we're talking communities who don't have voices. So it was, you know, it was a little different audience, but it was the same. It was the same thing. It was about using the voice that you had. So having started there, coaching seemed like a natural place to go. And plus, we were moving across Canada a couple of times, so it was nice to work from home for a while. So it became something that was very, very valuable to me inside. It became about voice, and I realized that it's all about voice. You know, voice is universal. Voice is something that we all use to express. That's kind of our initial way of expressing. So it's vital that we can do it, that we can say what we need to say, but it's also vital, of course, to know where it's coming from, and that we're speaking for ourselves and we're not speaking for someone else, or with any kind of hesitancy that someone won't like what we say. So yeah, I've been coaching now for 13, 14 years. So it's been a ride, and the you know, the longer I go, the more convinced I am that, you know, voice is it. We need to be talking more about voice, you know, and taking the concept of shame away from, you know, from those of us, and I'm part of that, who have struggled with voice.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can relate well to that. So, so exciting. I have 47 questions based on what you just said. First one, though, going way back, you said you were at that shelter for 10 years. And if I heard you correctly, you said you didn't at first know why you were there, and you didn't question it, right? And I heard that in some way as you trusted, I don't know, your intuition, you trusted some kind of guidance. What was that? What was going on for you? How did you, you know, what was your experience of that?
Well, let me say first that I had no concept of being on a spiritual journey at that point, none at all. But I was, and I'll use the term loaded. I was loaded with the need to both protect people that were vulnerable, and to, on a political level, stop, you know, the permission that some of us have to silence others. So yeah, when I walked in there, it was like, this is it. This is where I need to be, you know. And I learned incredible amounts from those women and their partners at the same time. You know, we were talking about, you know, both sides of the work. You know, we weren't working with the men, but we certainly saw what was happening with the men at that same time, you know. So yeah, it was where I needed to be. And I didn't question it. It was just, yeah, I just kind of had that knowing, which is interestingly where my intuition arrives still. is right there. That's my knowing.
And what that's beautiful, Dianna. Thank you. And what you said about having no concept of being on a spiritual path at that point, how does that relate to what you just spoke?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Well, so when you started that response, you said, at that point in my life, I had no concept of being on a spiritual path or something like that. And,
Right.
and maybe what the reason you said that is because now that you do have some awareness of that, you can see how spirit was arranging things for you. Is that something like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that now. Yes, I had no concept of that back in the day for many, many, many years. But now I can see that I was there for a reason. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that I was given those nudges. so grateful. I wouldn't be here today or, doing this work if someone hadn't been looking out for me and giving me those little nudges on the way. Yeah.
Well, and it's also it's a testament to one, your level of caring and resilience, because I imagine that was a challenging environment to be in. We know the stats around all kinds of social services and how many people burn out from that type of work. So I can imagine, especially for you who didn't like set out with a mission to do that. Did you have times in the midst of that where you where it was hard or you thought about giving up?
No. I had to think about that for a minute, but no, I didn't, because I knew I needed to be there on some level. Yeah, no, I didn't question it. I questioned, there was always another, particularly political place to investigate and start to challenge. So there was always something new to learn. There was always something new to learn and relate it back to the needs of those women who were being assaulted, who couldn't be in their own homes, whose children, were sleeping two in a bed because that's all we had. So yeah, no, I didn't question that.
Beautiful. Well, so two things come there. One is we've already spoken a bit about your intuition, and also, and we haven't really said it this way, but I suspect there's a important link between intuition and voice, right? I want to set that aside for a minute, and I'll ask you more about that in a minute. You've also brought up the word politics a couple times, and I'm really curious because some would say that in our current era, we are experiencing a very high level of suppression of voices, aka censorship or cancel culture or media manipulation. From your perspective as someone that's so intimately involved with voice, I believe more on a individual level, but since you brought up the political aspect of it, is that something that's part of your view or your mission now?
It's not part of my mission, but it's always interesting to be the observer and understand the relationship of, between voice and political structures, commercial structures, because it's really the same concept when you think about it. When I see a client one-to-one, or I see a client in a group, I know and I understand that what they're expressing, what they need to express, is coming from inside. It's not what's coming from the outside, which is kind of the same kind of structures that say, be a really good wife, don't talk back if you're a child, teach your children not to talk back, all kinds of places where we get silenced. So it's really interesting. It's always been interesting for me to watch, now that I'm not doing that kind of work, to watch the relationship between voice and those structures. Because we need to, if we're going to make any kind of change that is in any way that is truly effective, we need to be able to speak for who we are. We need to speak our own truth. We need to speak about what matters to us. And when we're doing that especially from a healthy way, from a healthy place, when we've done some of our own work, hopefully, we are expressing some really significant goodness. We're not messing in that, in any of those structures. We want a new structure. We want something that is going to be, the only word that I can think of is conscious, something that we're thinking about that matters and that has a really healthy, important impact on people. And I have to remind you too that I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not an American, so I can't speak about the politics now. But I watch, and it's the same. Like it's all the same. There are significant numbers of people who are silenced by political structures.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, so if we take it from that broader perspective and bring it back to the individual for a moment, then I think you gave some of the reasons already why people might be or feel silenced and not using their voice. Could you say more about how it does happen and what the cost is for us individually?
Yeah, sure. So I really distinguish between finding and using your voice. Using your voice is the obvious. I'm going to say something. I'm going to express myself in whatever way. And finding your voice is going inside and figuring out what it is you need to say. So there are all kinds of things I'm sure that you're very, very familiar with, and probably our listeners too, but very similar things happen for everybody in terms of creating that block inside that says, no, you don't get to say that, or you don't get to be that. So again, we're following some of the rules of, just what, humans have set up for us that we've done, and without looking inside. So it's kind of that, it's being driven by two different places, and we won't. And sorry, let me go back a little bit. So some of those places are really about trauma, obviously. If we have been traumatized in any way, we carry that. And if we can't clear it or heal it in ways that work for us, then we still carry it. So, we could be in a brand new relationship that is really great, and suddenly something will arise that maybe triggers us, and it's like, oops, not saying that. I'm just going to be quiet over here, So there's trauma, there's, ancestral stuff that we're carrying, the traumas that our ancestors experienced, generations ago, that we could be carrying, that we don't always recognize. That was a new one for me when I started this journey. Absolutely. And I love learning about that. And there are things that happen just as we grow. So, every family has their different way of doing things. Some people are disciplinarians, some people are not. And, everybody has their own choice about that. But it becomes something that we carry, even if it's not, as difficult, or I shouldn't say as difficult, because it's all difficult, but if it's not considered as, and I'll put this in quotes, serious as, say, an assault, it still may be something that you're not feeling, it's not resonating with you. So there's a good chance that you're going to carry that. And the next time you get triggered, that little monkey's going to come back up and say, you're not, you're safer if you just stay quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, and will you say more then about what the impact is, or what the cost of that is? I mean, I'm sure that's been a huge part of your own journey and the work you do with people. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. So the cost is huge, and it's different for everyone. So, it doesn't have to be the person that can actually identify 3 traumas or whatever that has the most difficulty necessarily. It's kind of how we connect to it and how we relate to it for ourselves, and how much we are willing to stop and pay attention to those, those nudges that say, no, don't speak right now, you're not safe. And how much they are willing to go and do some healing to help move through those things. So the cost is great. The cost is very great. I mean, I see plenty of women who now are, in their 60s and 70s, who are still struggling with voice, who often can't enjoy a relationship because they get triggered, or they just don't know what to do. They've lived so long looking out here, which is what we do when we are voice challenged. We're looking outside for the input of everyone else to tell us what we should be doing, as opposed to paying attention to ourselves and going inside and looking to see what's there and what resonates, what doesn't resonate, and make our conscious choices from there. So the cost is huge. It can be very, very huge. Now, these are not necessarily women who will be saying, I'm good like this. Would they love to have relationships that are kind and supportive and just full of unconditional love? Of course, because that's what we all want. Yeah. That's what we all want. So yeah, they're not necessarily there by choice. They're there because they feel as though they can't do anything else at this point.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so you made the great distinction earlier about finding one's voice and using one's voice. You might have used a bit different terminology, but how do you support people? I'm sure it's different for everybody, but how do you support people to find the voice? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So finding the voice is going in and learning how to trust yourself, learning how to acknowledge who we are and what we need, what we want. Acknowledge all that. Understand that we can trust those things about ourselves, that we don't have to simply believe who's speaking to us at that moment and take direction from there. We can take direction from ourselves. So that's a really big part of it, for sure. And once we start to do that, when we start to, on the basis of trusting ourselves, we go in and we take a look, we get to know who we are. Imagine this, Daniel, if we have, most of our lives, if we've been looking outside ourselves for our own direction and our own, making our own choices based on that, then it's not easy to switch over. We don't trust who we are automatically. We don't. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is learning how to trust. And then from there, it's about practice. Practice and practice and practice. And I don't mean practice just, I'm going to tell so-and-so what I think of them. That's not voice. That's one of the steps that I identify as one of the steps of being voiceless. There's sadness. There is anger and frustration, and there is something that is far more conscious. It's allowing and acceptance. So when we're not, when we haven't kind of taken a look at all those steps, it's easy to say, I'm using my voice. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna tell them what I think about them. Well, that's really not, that's not going to be helpful for us. That's not, kind of looking inside. That's simply looking inside and acknowledging, I need to express how I feel about such and such a circumstance for me, what that was like for me, as opposed to, I'm going to try to manage or control someone else.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. So that sparks two things for me. I'll say I want to ask you about. One is, I remember when I was first studying writing, coming across a quotation that was something like, the genuine, authentic expression of emotion is instantaneously transformative, right? And I remembered, and I don't know if that's entirely true or not. There's certainly some truth to it. I remember reading that though, and this was for me kind of the beginning of the spiritual path for me, was writing, because I just started to move stuff that had been buried or stuck, or I hadn't given myself permission to feel or express. And then a few years later, I was living at a center, and somebody told me about this guy named Brad Blanton, and he'd written a book called Radical Honesty: How Telling the Truth Will Change Your Life, something like that. And what he advocates, or did at the time anyway, was telling the unedited truth all the time, unfiltered, unedited, which became for a lot of people much like what you were referring to, which is, let me tell you everything that I think about you. And my sense of it at the time is, it was really, for me, it was actually useful, because I had put so many locks on telling the truth that it was useful for the pendulum to swing over here, and open up the floodgates in a way. However, it was really extreme, and it did a lot of damage as well. And so I came to eventually thinking, yeah, that's not necessarily the way. So,
Yeah.
well, let me just pause there. I said a lot. There wasn't really a question, but is that resonating? Does it make any sense to you?
It certainly does. So I think what we forget when we jump into places like that, I think and no disrespect to that author, of course, but I think what we forget is that we are all made of unconditional love. And, a lot of my work is teaching women to align with who they are. And I start there because, I work with a lot of women who are not on a spiritual path at all. So this is all new to them, right? So to be able to consider that we can align with ourselves. So it's basically being in alignment with our own needs, wants, and desires. And that's a big one if you haven't had a voice. It's a really big one, again, because we've been used to looking outside for our direction. Yep. So when we do that, we have to recognize that, the love in us, even if we're not calling it unconditional love or talking about it in a spiritual way, that love is still there and has always been there and will always be there. We are made of love. So we need to recognize that we need to act on love, act with love as well. It's one of the things that we need in this lifetime, in our human lifetime. And that's part of self-alignment. If we act in anger or hurt, or if we lash out, that's really not us. Even if we think that it is, it's really that's not what we're made of on a spiritual level. It's definitely not what we're made of. So yeah, that's kind of where I like to show the difference between those two, because people will come to me with that anger. In fact, I had one of those epiphanies at one point in my career, and I just found myself writing about how it's not just people who seem like they are either sad or incapable of choosing what they want. It's not just those people that need our support. It's the angry people too. Yeah.
Well, will you say more about that? Why? What do you mean?
Well, because when we are in that, as I said earlier, when we're in that state of anger and we're lashing out, then we're not recognizing that unconditional love within ourselves. We're not recognizing that as something that is of value to us or important to us, right? Which kind of carries over into, not just us being love, but, carries over into making conscious choices. So, or even just living a conscious life. When we make a conscious choice, we're reflecting back on what that is for us. What is it that, where am I resonating here? Like, what's the best choice to make for me? And when we are looking at a conscious lifestyle, we're looking at working and living, being love. So it's kind of undeniable that, but it's a hard sell for a lot of people because they just haven't experienced that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I'm with you. Here's what came to me as you were speaking in the last couple of pieces. There's beautiful man that has become a client with me recently, and one of the things that I've heard him say is when he was a kid, he never could tell what he wanted because he was always told, you don't want that, this is what you want. And so now one of the questions that I ask myself and I ask clients all the time is, what would you love to create? Right? To me, that's like one of the juiciest things in life. What would you love to create? And this guy, bless his heart, when I asked that question, he's like, I don't know. How could I possibly know that? Right? So from your perspective in working with voice, I mean, I think the tie-in's fairly obvious from what you were speaking about. What kind of guidance would you give in that way?
Well, I would wonder about his spiritual path because I think that, wherever we are on that journey, it's healing.
Yeah.
Right. So, because, I mean, a gentleman that's experienced that is, he's going to have to spend time healing because that would have been, a really difficult thing to grow with. And I know even with the men's book that I did, the number of men who were addicted or incarcerated because they couldn't say or be who they needed to be. So I think it's important to connect with that spirit, with our spiritual side. And even if we're not kind of ready to go there, then we can start with just looking inside, just, meditating, getting connected with ourselves and whatever our description of our higher power is, whatever is there. It could be source energy, it could be God, it could be the universe, just chilling with yourself. You can make those connections if you choose to, but getting to know you, getting to know, who you are and what you mean, what you stand for, what is it that makes you feel like you are living a vibrant life? What is it? Like for me, it's my grandkids. So it's thinking about that stuff, giving ourselves the opportunity, allowing ourselves to think about that, allowing ourselves to think about more. And if we can think about, okay, this really lights me up. This gets my juices flowing. So, I wonder if I can get there. What would it take to get there?
Yeah, beautiful. I love those questions. Okay. I shift gears again. We've been zooming in, zooming out. For some reason, this keeps coming to me, so I'm going to bring it here, and I'm not entirely sure why. One of my greatest heroes is Martin Luther King Jr. Right? And something very poignant I remember in studying his life, just after Brown versus Board of Education. This was a court case in the U.S., and the result of that court case was that it was no longer legal to separate children in school based on race. Right. Prior to that, they had, African American kids over in this school and white kids over here, and it was it was just one, of course, of the milestones, but it was a really big battle and a big victory in some way. And after that, a reporter said to Martin Luther King Jr., he said, Dr. King, is it true, that there are really so many people against the Negro, right? That was the terminology used at the time. And MLK just paused for a minute and he thought about it and he said, no, there really aren't that many people that are against the Negro people. It's just that there are so many people that support equality that haven't spoken up.
Right.
And some reason that just really landed for me. And I've always felt it in some way like a moral responsibility to, as Maggie Kuhn says, use my voice even if it shakes. And so, we've spoken a bit about the impact on a personal level and a little bit about the bigger societal level. Is there more you can say about this in terms of the societal level?
You know what? I think it's kind of a clear picture that when we're not able to use our voice, then we can't speak up for ourselves. I mean, I know that sounds really simple, but I just kind of want to make that connection. We can't speak up for ourselves. So when we can't speak up for ourselves, often we're seen as weak. Plus all the other, the racial issues, there are countless minority groups that don't get an equal position in the world, right? Yeah. So it really does start there, I think, in many respects in terms of voice, because when we can't say something, we swallow it. We swallow it. It sits there. It's that stuff in our gut. And the next time we are in a position where we can say something, we feel that again. So it's a repetitive pattern for the voiceless that really does need to be broken at one time or another. And sometimes, when we go back to the anger part, sometimes it's the anger that is the first piece to break it, and then they can come back a little bit from that. I can only imagine the frustration of some of those kids back in the day, and how much they really wanted to say, but they really couldn't. So, I think, and there's so many fights to be, I won't say fought because that all sounds so terribly violent, but, there's so many arguments to be a part of, and so many ways that we can support people. And we have to use our own conscious awareness to understand what's the most important piece for us in terms of stepping out and supporting different groups. What is really important to us? Are we adding our voice here? Are we adding our voice there? Are we adding it to all of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So let's pause for a second. And I imagine some people in our audience are saying, ooh, I think there's more to my voice, or maybe I've been holding myself back, or maybe I don't even know where my voice is. I want to find it. I want to use it. How do you work with people? How could people work with you, Dianna?
You know what? They can find me through my website. So cravemorelife.com is my website. They can connect with me there. I have group programs that kind of run. I like to offer programs for those who are just stepping out with their voice, maybe even just recognizing that their voice has been stifled, all the way to, okay, now I'm ready to change. I'm ready to shift. I'm ready to transform. I'm ready to look at different ways that I can start to honor myself, which is where the soul comes in. If the soul is the one that is the being that's guiding us, and, are the owner of the information, so to speak, then we need to honor what we learn. So, one of my bigger programs is called Stand By Me, and it's standing by our soul, learning how to do that on a day-to-day basis. So it's very high support. It's going, it's taking that deep dive. So that's kind of the far end of the spectrum. The closer to the other end is our dance meditations. So, we combine dancing, which is my favorite and definitely a go-to for me when I need to be, when I need to chill, or I just need to bring that vibe back up, right? So to use those to both do that, to raise the vibe, but also to connect spiritually while we are in a meditative state, and while we are just fresh from that dancing and are heated up, and the molecules are all heated up, so that we can connect better. We have a clear channel, so to speak. So that's kind of the different ends, and then there are different programs in between as well. So I have a free Facebook group. I have a Wise Voice Sage, I call it, group where women can just, it's a membership group, and they can just pop in and talk about voice and what's happening for them when it's happening.
Awesome. Beautiful. Okay. And well, you've really already spoken to this. I still think there's more, especially for someone like me who might be a little slow on the draw sometimes. Your website is called Crave More Life, right? And your work is Crave More Life Coaching. Why that name?
It just arrived. Like everything else, it just arrived, and it fit because everybody that I had connected with over my entire, over 40-year career was craving more. That's why they're coming. They're craving more. They're not satisfied with what they have. And I'm not talking about, I want to make another million. I'm talking about people who can't ask their husband for a divorce, or can't, tell their mother-in-law that it's okay. I have the kids, I can make these decisions for my children, whatever the decision is, or change jobs because this one is just not feeling it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a range of things that we need to use our voices to do. So yeah, we need to strengthen our voice to do that.
Hallelujah. I love it. People ask me often, well, who do you work with, or what kind of people? And I often say, well, people, and I haven't used those exact phrases, but those are the people that I work with, people that are craving more life, craving more contribution to the world. And speaking of contribution to the world, you have a gift for our audience. Is that a true story?
That's a very true story. Yes, I do. So what I would like to offer is my Deep Core Soul Connection guided meditation. And I know, Dianna, you're going to, there we go. It's right there, right on the screen, which is great. It's free, it's short, but it's going to take you through a path through yourself to find some of your truth. And you'll be able to use it repetitively, so that, you may come down and connect at some point and learn one thing. You may come back another time and learn another. You know what it's like when you're connected, you learn all the time, right? So yeah, that's what that meditation is for. And remember that it's important to do that, because when we're voice challenged, we're looking outside of ourselves for our answers. So it's time to go inside. And I actually have a tattoo on my arm that says, "Look inside." It's time to do that. Yeah. So this meditation will help you do that.
That's awesome. I love it. Right. There's that wonderful saying that one who fails to go within will go without. right? And I know for me, as somebody who's had the great blessing of so many amazing, wonderful mentors and guides and gurus, there's this beautiful expression actually that relates. The guru says to the disciple, you've got 3 jobs: find me, love me, and leave me. And I know for me, part of my own process has also been to say thank you so much to all those outer authorities, and in a sense kill the guru so that I come back to my own inner authority. And so that's an ongoing part of my evolution, still and always.
I love that. I really love that. I think that's an important distinction here, because as we grow and as we shift our behaviors, we're also learning more about ourselves each time. So one of the big tenement there is to recognize that we are our own authority, and that from there we can consider all those emotional hits we've had over the years as learning opportunities. Right? Yeah. So, when a woman first comes into this, she's not, or even a man, they're not thinking about that, but they get there. It's a beautiful place to be, as you well know.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, and now for y'all who are audio, not video here with us. Well, so if you're tuned in live on social media or watching again on social media, you'll see the link in the comments. And for those that are just on audio, I spell it out for you. Well, cravemorelife.com. I think you can get that one. cravemorelife.com, and then /deepcore, DEEPCORE is how that goes. That's how you can get to that awesome, fantastic gift. Thank you for that, Dianna.
You're quite welcome.
As we're headed toward our time limit here, is there anything I haven't asked you about, or anything else that you would like to share?
You know what? I just want to remind people that I was in the trenches too, that I've been there. Yeah, I have. And this whole journey has been such a healing process for me. I will never go back. And I invite you to do the same, whether it's with me or with anyone. It doesn't really matter. But allow yourself to do the work, and allow yourself to jump out of the trenches too.
Hallelujah. Thank you for that. Well, and on that note, thank you for taking that journey and having the courage to climb your way out of the trenches. I know that wasn't easy for you, and your courage and your resilience and your efforts in that way is what's given you the ability and the credibility to be able to help so many others, as well as be here with us and generously share your wisdom. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much for that appreciation. That's awesome.
Yay. All right. And y'all in our audience, thank you, because without you, our world doesn't move much, right? Your change, your evolution, your courage, your transformation is the transformation of the world. And so it matters. You matter. I'm so glad you are here with us. I love you. Please do make your life even more of a masterpiece. And I look forward to seeing you. Mahalo for tuning in to the Art of Vibrant Living show, y'all. I'm Daniel Aaron, and may you live with great vibrancy.